My name is Noah Voelker. I'm originally from Texas, and at RRReuring, I am presenting an encounter called Economic Tarot Card Readings by MONOAH.
Welcome. Very happy to have you on the couch, the RRReuring couch. It might be good to first have an idea who you are. So could you, for sure that's good, could you maybe give a short explanation, description of who you are and what you did?
Yeah, so who I am. I'm Noah Voelker, and I'm originally from Texas, but I've been living in Amsterdam since 2014. I came here originally to do a Masters of Theater program called Das Arts, now called Das Theater. And after graduating, I've been living and working here as a theater maker, performer, advising people on their dramaturgy and technical stuff, and also doing side work to make life here.
Yeah. And did you, which works did you already make, or because this is not the first work, no, which you are showing in RRReuring?
No, this is not the first piece I've made since graduating. So since graduating, I've made one piece called Who Wants to Meet a Real Goddamn American, which was a storytelling piece about national identity, what does it mean to come from a certain place and have certain cultural affectations or performing certain cultural identities based around the relationship between myself, someone who is native-born American, and my brother who's from Russia. And my brother has grown up to be much more American than I will ever be. And then there's another forthcoming piece that I've made that's supposed to premiere soon called How to Make Good Art for East Germans. And that is a piece about East Germany in the 90s and afterwards. And yeah, I'm working with two East German artists. So what was this strange thing of German reunification? What are the consequences of that? And also, what does it mean to come from like the periphery? So those are two pieces I've worked on since graduating.
And what will you be presenting on RRReuring?
At RRReuring, I'll be presenting an encounter called Economic Tarot Card Readings by MONOAH. And I am MONOAH. And I am also the maker of these economic tarot cards. I designed and created my own tarot deck, all 78 cards, the major arcana, the minor arcana. And each card is a different term or idea or concept from the field of economics and finance. And with these cards, people, the audience, the public, they come to me with their questions, oftentimes very personal questions such as, what can I do about finding love? Should I settle down in this city? What can we do to make sure our children are happy? Such questions like that. And using these cards and conversation, we discuss their issues and we try to find different perspective and maybe even a bit of enlightenment.
And you use these economic terms, no?
Yeah.
To enter the question.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. How do you look at this direct meeting with the audience? How is that for you?
Yeah, directly meeting with the audience is something that I find incredibly important and necessary in the work that I do. You know, and one aspect, like the thing I really love about theater and performance is that each performance is this meeting between the audience and the public. And I often like to go a step beyond that, which is, often at times collaborating with the audience. So in these tarot card readings, what I find really interesting is it's not just me pulling out a card, something like private property or scientific management or marginal propensity to consume, and then explaining what these terms literally mean. What I'm interested in is how the person sitting across from me, what they see into it, what they can read into it. Because I'm also very interested in like what knowledge that the public has, what perspective they have, and what that can do to what I think and how I see the world and see these terms as well.
Yeah. How is it? How do you consider the responsibility for your co-worker almost? No, is it you, would you consider it like that? A co-worker, co-maker? Or?
Yeah, collaborator in a sense in that moment. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's also part of the fun of it is like finding out what this encounter will be like. You know. So that's kind of my responsibility as the maker, as the sort of instigator of the piece and this moment, is to figure out the negotiation of how this conversation will happen, how it will flow, how much push and pull needs to happen.
Yeah.
But that's part of the fun.
Yeah. And how did you come up with this idea?
So I knew for quite a while I wanted to do something about economics, the field, the knowledge field, because back in the United States, in my undergraduate studies, I studied two things, because it's quite easy in the US in college to, what we do is double major. So you can have two major fields of study. And I chose theater and then also economics. I chose theater first, and then my parents were like, you need to do something that's very serious with you need something that's more serious. And so I said, economics. That sounds serious, right? Theater has done a lot for me in my life. It's brought me here to this couch, to this conversation, and to showing here. But economics, not so much. But it's something that has always stuck with me, and I always find myself thinking a lot about the material world, the material conditions, and economic policy, and my own sort of political frustrations with that, and just wanting to deal with this sort of body of knowledge and how we understand how do I understand it, how do other people understand it. And so I knew this was my topic, and I knew I wanted to start at the very sort of base level of like, what are the fundamental terms and ideas of sort of like economics that maybe people have some familiarity with, maybe have heard, maybe not heard, but it's stuff that everything on these cards, which I have. I have them here.
That would be great to see them.
Here.
Yeah.
Everything here is stuff that appears in a sort of introduction to micro or macroeconomics textbook, so it's nothing really wild. And I wanted to see how can these terms or ideas, how can they be reconsidered, thought about in a different way, you know? Like what, to take them from this abstract world that seems quite firm and far away and bring them down into a place that can be more readily discussed and played around with. And I had been thinking for a few months last year about like a card game of some kind. And in talking with, some friends, someone just brought up the idea of tarot as I was thinking about cards. And I didn't know a lot about tarot. So I asked a friend to do a tarot reading for me. And that sort of connection. So, and you know, on like tarot cards, there's a lot of symbolism and a lot of things that seem mysterious. And, you know, things you have to sort of like unpack around your question and find meaning. I found that really attractive as kind of like a way of performance. You know, the reader doing this performance with the other person of like, let's take your question and using these sort of esoteric images and numerology and theology, let's open up your question using these cards and what's on them. And I was like, oh, well, why not try that with economics, which oftentimes seems as mysterious, as mystical as the thing that's on the real tarot cards.
Yeah. Can you show maybe a few cards?
Yeah, let's find one. Let's find some. I don't want to show them all because that's...
They will be long maybe.
Yeah.
But because also the images you chose on the cards.
So the images are created from copyright-free clip art. Okay. So I'm never been very good at drawing, but I know how to manipulate images in Photoshop. So the process was picking the terms basically from, mainstream economics textbooks, because that's the material I want to deal with, is mainstream economics. That's what kind of like surrounds us. And then thinking about what could be the sort of visual metaphors, and then pulling together images and manipulating them in Photoshop. Let's see, what would be good? This one's good. And let's see, this one's good. All right. So for the camera here. So I'll show this one first, which is also the kind of logo that I use for all the promotion stuff, speculative finance. And this one I like quite a lot.
Austerity.
Yeah. And this was quite an easy metaphor to come up with, because I can't remember who said it. I think it might have been David Cameron, or the former Prime Minister of the UK. Someone way up there said, like, described austerity as just getting like a haircut, which to me I find quite absurd and also distant, because austerity usually means the cutting away of necessary social resources and welfare. So it's a bloody haircut. And then, maybe on the other end of that is redistribution, which is money being passed out to many hands.
Okay, yeah, I see it now,
So that's just
nice.
3 of 78 cards.
Yeah. Hey, and I also, with this piece where you use economics, but also in the piece How to Make Good Art for East Germans, I think there's a lot of societal topics involved. Why are you so interested in using these economic and societal topics and use that for your artistic work? And how do you do that? Maybe that's a big question, but let's go for it.
Yeah. All right. So the first part, why is this sort of like societal or economic sort of things? Part of it is this ongoing, obsession that I can't shake, of like being deeply concerned with economics, even though it's not a very fun thing to talk about at parties, but it's what I pay attention to.
Yeah.
But it's like the material basis of the world is something that I consider extremely important, that so much of the social political issues arise out of the material conditions that each and every one of us is sort of steeped in. And economics is a field that tries to describe these material conditions or tries to theorize around them. And so I find it important that, to deal with that directly. So to deal with that language of economics that is sort of describing the material conditions that we live under. I guess take, for example, like, and then trying to connect those things that seem so abstract, such as like the unemployment rate, and connect that to something that feels quite humanistic and tangible, in fact. So what does it mean if the rate of unemployment increases by 3%? Like, what does that number actually mean? And it's about connecting that to the real terms of, like, someone losing their job, like a parent losing their job, like what kind of turmoil that can cause within a family, and that can last not only just in one generation, but in the next generation and such. To not just let these numbers, these terms and ideas live up in this sort of abstract world, but really connected to, like, the human.
In our personal life.
The personal life as well, yeah. And so that exists also in the East Germany project, where my collaborators, they're both East German, they're both born around the same time of the early 80s. They're both really relying on their personal narratives and their family narratives in our performance, and me being the outsider who doesn't speak German, my access point into that world of East Germany becomes, or is much more around like statistics and information and political and economical history of that region, because that's something I feel like I can like read about and also speak about. And then I can also, for me, I also draw that, to me internally, I really make that connection and get like, I read stuff about like, industrial production shrinking, and it actually makes me upset. But then I guess part of the artist is how to translate that for an audience.
Yeah, that sounds pretty difficult in a way, for me at least. How do you get to the forms of your work?
I think it's spending a lot of time with the material, and working, working with other people, and really always being in conversation with other people. So the tarot cards is an idea that came about through always this sort of conversation within, friends, colleagues, community, and you just sort of get to that place. I wish there was a more magical answer than that.
Yeah.
But it's time and work and not letting things go.
But I guess you are looking for something, no?
Yeah.
I mean, because in our
I'm always thinking about how am I going to connect this to another person, and also another person who may not necessarily like care immediately.
Yeah. Right.
So the tarot thing becomes like the tarot thing is like, I kind of came to the sort of idea of like, well, everyone kind of has a certain understanding about tarot. And maybe they've done it a bunch, or some, or not at all, but they kind of understand. There's cards, there's a question, there's cards, and then there's a conversation of trying to use the cards to explain it, yeah? It's much more approachable. And so can I take that thing that's already understood and already pre-existing, and then mix it with something that people don't really think about or want to think about?
Yeah. Because in a way you are shifting then, or maybe even shifting a certain kind of format, no, or changing, or and using it in a different way.
Yeah.
Where also the expectations, which challenges also the expectations, I guess, of the people who are seeing it.
Yeah. But I like I like to change the formats of things, to start off with something that seems familiar and approachable, because I want what I do to be familiar and approachable, and then in the moment the expectation shifts.
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah.
You mentioned as a sort of research phase of how to make good art for East Germans, the store of unheard stories, and I think that was also. Can you tell us a little bit about that, because that's interesting as well.
So the way in which how to make good art for East Germans came about is still a multi-year process. And the way it began with conversations with my two collaborators, Rika and Burkhardt, and just the three of us sort of talking remotely about, what was the East German experience, what was the 90s and the Wende being change or reunification. And we came to a kind of feeling of like, okay, we want to do something, but does anyone else care? Or is this like way past history and people want to forget it? And so we're like, well, let's just go talk to people. We didn't want to just conduct interviews. We didn't just want to walk down the street and say, hey, what was your trauma of the 1990s, We instead wanted to create a space in which people could come and talk. And so we went to Rika and Burkhardt's hometowns, Neubrandenburg in Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, and Mittweida, which is near Chemnitz in Saxony. Get out your maps. But these are, one town is like 30,000 people, post-industrial, and the other one is like 5,000 people, And so in these hometowns, we installed ourselves in a space, kind of like a salon or living room, and just advertised through their sort of family networks. Also, if you work in small towns, the newspaper will write about you because there's not much else going on. And then
That's handy.
and people there and still read newspapers. And so we didn't know if anyone would come, but for like each week they were there, we spent all day, every day talking to people. And these conversations were like half an hour, maybe sometimes longer, of people just sort of letting things unload. And because also I was there as this outsider, what happened was that people felt the need to explain more about their own story and about their own situation, rather than just sort of rely on the kind of shorthand that is just naturally, if you're talking to someone who's within your community or field, whatever, you sort of rely on just like the shorthand, the condensed explanation. But if there's an outsider, then suddenly there needs to be an expansion, and that changed the sort of dynamic.
Yeah.
So the Store for Unheard Stories became this, expansive sort of living room place for people to talk about the subject. And from all these talks, we realized, we should pursue this project. We should make something, because there is something unresolved here about about East Germany.
So it was actually not a store where they could buy unheard stories, but where they brought in unheard stories, no?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's.
But we were also offering up our own. Like, it wasn't a one-sided thing. It was quite a lot of actual conversation.
And only after you did this store project, then you decided to make the performance.
Yeah, it was after the store that we decided to do a full theater project.
Yeah. How do you look at theater, or or theatricality in your work?
So what I love about theater is, like I said before, it is this meeting place between the makers or the performers, and the audience. And then theatricality is this, it's so simple, but it's this freedom to sort of put upon a different situation or a costume or an identity, something that might is even a bit silly or ridiculous. But because you can do that, and because we're all agreeing this is what we're gonna do, then new things can come out of that. So for example, in Economic Tarot Card Readings by MONOAH, when I am MONOAH, it is a version of myself as this kind of like, fortune teller, tarot card reader, bit of a, much more slowed down, dreamy version of myself. And when people come in, they follow a trail of lights into this space, and it's hazy, and there's candles everywhere, and there's jazz music playing, and I offer them whiskey, bourbon, and stare deeply into their eyes for 30 seconds. And, I do all this stuff that is on the surface ridiculous, and it's theatrical, but it creates this different energy and atmosphere, and people accept it. And then we look at these cards, and they ask me a serious question about their life, and we talk about it. So, and it's an honest conversation. I'm not trying to bullshit people and mess around with them. If they really come with me something serious, then I honor that. But the theatricality allows us to sort of enter this different way of being, to explore something maybe real and serious for these 20, 30 minutes. And then they can leave, and maybe they take a bit of insight with them. But that theatricality becomes an entrance point to being able to be different, to do something different, while still also talking about real things.
Yeah, that's very nice. Yeah. And what about your future plans, as a last question?
Okay, cool. So so waiting for things to premiere. So how to make good art for East Germans will premiere hopefully this summer, and then we will do a tour in East Germany. Particularly, we also want to go to smaller towns and villages, the periphery, off the beaten path, whatever other saying there is, because that's important to our values, is to actually go out to these smaller places and people who normally don't get theater. And we also don't want to play in theaters. So more community centers and the like. And then with this, the tarot card project I see as just one expression of this research into economics and mysticism. So I want to keep finding new forms or new pieces to sort of talk about economics, to challenge it as a field of knowledge, or get people to think about it differently, to approach what already exists differently. And so for the next thing, I'm quite interested in the experts of the field, economists, these figures that almost in the same breath can be hyper-rational and say, yes, this the economy can be looked about in a very serious, scientific way and explain, and at also the same moment be quasi-religious and saying, like, yes, what's going on is like an act of God punishing us for being unfaithful, and we must burn a fat calf in order to appease the god. So maybe next quarter the markets will go up again. And so I want to play with that sort of extremes as a performer. And some stuff in public space with some collaborators. So it's a project called Fireplace, in which we will be on the Haarlemmerplein, and we're going to be working with passersby in a COVID-safe way, I'm going to be doing storytelling around, what does it mean to be emerging from lockdown when that happens, hopefully in the future, and what will it mean to be together with strangers again.
Okay, nice.
So that's hopefully in the near future. And also doing the tarot cards. Oh, yeah, I forgot about this. I will also be doing the tarot cards in public space, but in particular, I want to do it in Zouras, near the sort of banks there. So I really want to do... So a lot of times I've been doing the tarot cards for, people who are not so invested in the field. And I want to particularly position kind of a fortune-telling booth near banks and businesses to really reach out to bankers and people who have much more of a stake or thinking about this more in their sort of daily life and see what they have to say.
Yeah, nice.
All right.
Are you collecting those, or are you collecting those responses, or responses is not the proper word, but are you thinking of using those again also for future projects, or?
The responses from like bankers and such? Or?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's like, it's part research. So like every time I'm doing the tarot cards, I'm learning something about how I do it, about what other people say, what they see in the cards. So like when people see new levels of metaphor and meaning, then I can carry that with me. And so like the whole thing keeps growing and changing, and then also for future things as well.
Oh, nice. I'm very curious what those economists and bankers are saying, and how they can help or think about projects. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Noah.
I like it. I like how much beard I have there. Oh, and show it. Well, Facebook.